You're tuned in to Oilers Nation every day with Tyler Yaremchuk, live every weekday on the Nation Network YouTube.
Are the Seattle Kraken frauds? I think we may have just found out last night. Let's get into it with the lead. Yes, it is the lead, brought to you by our friends at Soho Yeg here on Oilers Nation every day. Soho on Jasper. You know they're going to have the place rocking on New Year's Eve. Why not go check them out? More details, sohoyeg.com. As always, it's the lead. And the Oilers, boy, are they giving us something good to talk about after that big win against the Seattle Kraken 4-3. They scored a lot early on. They scored a ton. And we are going to get to it all on Oilers Nation every day. We're streaming live on the Nation Network YouTube chat. We're going to bring on our guy Liam in a few minutes here to let everyone know what the light goal is. But yeah, it was a big 7-2 win for the Edmonton Oilers. It was more or less, well, second, third shift of the game. Oilers get a power play. Zach Hyman makes them pay. Kostin scores about 30, 40 seconds after that. Darnell Nurse after that. And the Oilers were up 3-0 less than 4 minutes into that hockey game. And honestly, I don't really think they ever let up. I know the shots kind of got skewed at one point there. I'll get to all of that in a bit. But really, that was just a tremendous performance by the Edmonton Oilers. And I loved every second of it, as I'm sure all of you did as well. Give me your thoughts. Give me your takes. What impressed you the most with that victory over the Seattle Kraken? I mean, Connor McDavid, it's weird the point we're at with this guy, where he'll go put up 5 points. That's something that hasn't happened very often this year in the NHL. But he'll go put up 5 points, and we're sitting here going, he probably wasn't the biggest story from that hockey game. Like, who else does that happen to? Even Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, 4 apples in that hockey game for Nuggy. And he's not even the biggest story. Stuart Skinner stops 36 of 38 shots. He's not even in my cornerstone 3 big things from the game. Those were 3 incredible individual performances, but it feels like we're just getting used to it here in Edmonton because Stuart Skinner he's found a groove. He's this team's number 1 goalie. Connor McDavid has 20 more points than anyone in the NHL not on the Edmonton Oilers. He's 20 points up on Jason Robertson. That is insane. This guy's going to he very well could hit 100 points by the end of January. Who does that? Ryan Nugent-Hopkins is having a career year. 4 more assists for Nuge last night. 45 points in 37 games for number 93. Ken Holland, who we're going to talk about in a little bit here. Nice work signing that guy to an 8-year extension. Just over $5 million. I'd say he's earning his keep right now. Zach Hyman scores twice last night. So many positives. I want to hear your favorite parts from that big game last night. Streaming live on the Nation Network YouTube. If you're watching, hit us up in the chat. Hammer that like button as well. Dr. Gonzo, QF Pro, everyone is in. Liam, you good to go? Can I bring on Liam? Yes, he is. He gave me the thumbs up. What's up, Liam? What was the most impressive part of that victory last night?
I think the most impressive part was the fact every time you blinked, there was a goal. That was pretty awesome. I think the fact that McDavid played 16 minutes and had 5 points, pretty cool. I just like the whole team performance was unbelievable, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way they just came out and just absolutely dominated them. And like, I swear they must have listened to Oilers Nation radio too, because they played a tough game. Like they were, what was it? Almost two fights, I guess. Like even Nurse got tangled up there in front, ripping off whoever's helmet that was. It was like at one point it showed the hits and the Oilers only had like 11 or something, but I felt like every single one was like super noticeable. Like even Yamamoto taking that massive hit to get that goal too. What was it? Was that Yessy's goal? I think it was. I can't remember, but just a great performance and a good team performance. And you know what it kind of reminded me of was when the Oilers were without McDavid for that. Was it the whole game and a little bit of game against Pittsburgh and Draisaitl stepped up, right?
They turned it up. Yep.
Yeah, and last night, they did exactly the same without Leon, and it shows that like it's not just those 2 guys. Like this, I know, like you said, like McDavid had 5 points, and it wasn't even like an impressive 5 points, which is insane to even put words out there like that. But it was awesome. It was just awesome. Like the post game comments from our boy Clem Shady too. Like I love hearing that. Just a guy who's just excited to kind of be in the NHL and just be around everyone. Like, it's great to see.
Yeah, if you haven't seen it, the Oilers tweeted a video yesterday of Kostin getting the player of the game motorbike jacket that the Oilers give out in their locker room, and the player of the game vest is what they call it. And he just kind of said, like, he's so happy to be a part of this team and play with everybody there. And it's heartwarming, man. Like, that's a guy who struggled early in his career. He really didn't have a place in St. Louis. He was in and out of the lineup, kind of struggled with the expectations of being a first-round pick. He comes here, new lease on life, gets a second chance, and he's making the most of it. And I love it. He even said something in his post-game scrum where he was like, I'll fight for anybody on this team. You know, he doesn't go out there looking for tilts, but he'll stand up for a teammate if he has to. And this team needs more of that.
It's a lot different of a situation. I understand that, but like, it reminds me a lot of when Cassian kind of got here in a way of like guys who just needed a fresh start. Obviously, two different kind of lanes and things, but like come in and quickly, like the fans just kind of grab hold of them and they just ride it out. And Klim Shady's like, we've already got Mr. Klim Shady. What's the other? There's a ton more, and it's just like this guy is just so awesome to watch. And when last night he was just like, yeah, I just try and just go out there and I just try and play for the boys and just do the thing. And it's like those are the kind of characters that like help a team have success on the ice when they're that kind of person off the ice too.
Yeah. 100%. The chat is blowing up. There is a lot that everybody wants to get off their chest here, but we are going to get into our three big things from last night's game, brought to you by our friends at Cornerstone Insurance, Edmonton's premier insurance brokerage, your destination for commercial, home, auto insurance, over 90 years of experience. That's fantastic stuff. CornerstoneINS.ca. You'll see a little Oilers Nation logo on there. They give you a good deal if you're a nation citizen. That's what we love about Cornerstone. First up, Liam, I actually thought, again, it was a 7-2 game. It's a blowout. But I thought their defensive game was really solid. And people might look at the shots and go, well, I mean, you gave up 38 shots. How can your defensive game be solid? But for the most part, that's score effects. When a team goes up by a lot early, they tend to play very safe hockey. You're not really pushing the needle all that often. The other team is doing everything they can to get back in the game, and that is throwing pucks on net. And if we can flash up the heat map here from Natural Stat Trick, I mean, take a look at this. Edmonton, where are all their shots coming from for the most part? You see the darkest area is right in front of the net, and there is a big, big circle of color right around the slot. The Oilers were getting a lot of dangerous attempts. Let's take a look at Seattle. That dark area in front of the net is not that dark. Their darkest area where most of their shots were coming from is from the very, very top of the offensive zone. Everything else is pretty much spread out. The point I'm making here, the reason I'm showing you this is because they just threw a ton of pucks on net from the outside. The Oilers did a great job keeping them to the outside. There was a couple breakaways and things like that, but that'll happen in a game. Stuart Skinner was solid, bailed him out when he needed to. But I thought defensively that was actually a really solid game, and I wanted to point it out because I think the shot totals would lead people to be like, oh boy, Oilers, 38 shots. You can't keep giving up that high of a number. But I actually didn't view that as a problem, much in the same way I didn't view the Calgary game and that 45 shots against as that much of a problem either. Because if you keep teams to the outside, you're just making life really easy for Stuart Skinner. If anything, that helps him stay in the game. If he can feel rubber from the outside, they're basically throwing warm-up shots at him the entire game. So I thought the Oilers defensively were solid in that hockey game.
Yeah, like Pat stat in for the offense last night and Pat stat in for Stuart Skinner in back-to-back games, having to stop so many shots. For me, like you talk about the defense, and that play McDavid made right at the end of the game when it was already 7-2 comes back and like stick checks that guy to like help Skinner out because the guy would have scored, right? And like just kind of showed the commitment everyone had last night to like play good, strong team defensive game. And yeah, like that's back-to-back games now where the Oilers have done a good job of, yes, allowing shots, but nothing like too crazy or anything like that, and making life easy on everyone. And that's something they've really struggled with kind of the last 2 weeks before this last patch of games here, is just their own mistakes are causing goals. And right now, these last two games, that hasn't happened. They've actually done a really good job of forcing teams to score decent goals against them.
Kyler's in and says, I'm okay with these high shots against from the outside. Love getting that 939 from Stu, helping my fantasy team a lot. Love it.
Yep.
Katie said Stu stopped a breakaway early. He did. And he
Yep.
hasn't had a ton of success stopping breakaways so far this year. That was big. I agree. Drew Breezy, couldn't agree more, Tyler. One of the only times this year where the decor actually looked solid and just played a simple game, made crisp passes to break out, kept the play going. Yeah, it was a simple game, and it was an effective game. And again, I think you just take that 38 shots against and you just crumple it up in a ball and throw it out, because it's not that important of a number. If you watch that hockey game, you know the Oilers played very solid defensively. Transition play was really, really good as well. I want to get to one comment. Dylan was in and said Darnell Nurse played good last night. He had some praise for Nurse, and Nurse is actually my second big thing for our friends at Cornerstone Insurance. That was his best game of the season. I actually don't even think it was particularly close, but he played with some edge. When he jumped up in the play, it was effective. Obviously, he scored that goal early on, but he had a couple other looks. And none of the times where he jumped up in the play did it burn them going back the other way, which was a big problem with Darnell Nurse over the last 6 weeks here. Last night, he was very good at 5-on-5. When he was on the ice at even strength, the Oilers outscored the Kraken 4-0. That's solid. He played with a bit of a physical edge as well, and it didn't cost him any chances behind him. He picked his spots really well, and I think that game could be a really nice building block for Darnell Nurse going forward.
Yeah, and it's kind of what he is, isn't he? Like the last night, I think that's obviously like the best we've seen all season, but he's a good defender. The last couple of weeks, he's just been in a bit of a rut, and I suppose it happens to a lot of players, and he's always going to be labeled with the price tag, but take that away. He's a solid defender, and last night, I agree. Like, I thought it was good to see him get up in a rush. He probably could have had 2 goals in the first period, to be honest. Like right at the end, he should have probably buried that one too. And yeah, just his physicality, that's what Nurse is. Like he's a physical defender who can help you off the player. So I was glad to see him kind of get that game under his belt. And hopefully, like you said, that's a bit of a building block for him to move forward now.
Yeah. 100%. Wally is in, asked a question about holding out Draisaitl till the All-Star break. Ryan Rashog tweeting that Draisaitl was on the ice today, had a good skate, likely won't play tonight, but sounds like it's just a day-to-day issue for Leon Draisaitl. So again, that lines up with kind of what we were talking about yesterday. I believe it's a lingering thing for Leon Draisaitl, and it's just a matter of let's get this thing 100% right now. Give him a couple of days off. Don't put him through the stress of playing back-to-back games. Get him back to 100%. So this issue is kind of nipped in the bud right now, and it doesn't keep lingering throughout the season. You know, last year he played through the playoffs with a pretty gnarly injury, and he was still really damn good. Imagine how good he could be in the playoffs this year if he's at 100%. So the third big thing, you guys are itching for it. Oh, actually, Liam, do we have a light goal? What's the light goal today? What are we at already? Actually, that could we're at 14.
I just looked.
No, 22.
22. Let's go with. Can we get to 72 in 15 minutes in honor of McDavid? That's what he's at, right? 72, 73?
That's a good goal.
Yeah.
That's a good goal. If you're watching on the Nation Network YouTube and I see that there's 60 of you, hammer that like button for us if you haven't already. We're going to try to get to 72 to match Connor McDavid's point total. How many points will he be at after tonight, though, Liam? Because you were hitting me with the spicy stuff before the show.
Will Connor McDavid have an 8-point night in honor of Sam Gagner hitting 1,000 games? I mean, it would be the right thing to do. It would be the right thing to do.
Sure. Connor McDavid, as Tyler Mulick pointed out last night, he only played 16 minutes last night, and he put up 5 points. So that means there was a point for every 3 minutes he was on the ice. That is remarkable. But the third big thing from last night's game, you're itching for it in the chat. We touched on him a little bit, but it is the new fan favorite, Clem Shady. Clem is him. Clem Kostin. Mr. Clem. All the nicknames. He's earning them. Last night, that goal, the little flip to the backhand, tuck it right under the bar, nasty. Like, this guy was a first-round pick. He has a lot of skill, but he's starting to grow into the role that the Oilers need. He's mean, took a cross-checking penalty that I thought was a little dirty, but I didn't mind it. And then he's not afraid to, drop the mitts, even though he didn't get a fighting major for that, but who cares? That was unbelievable. Clem Kostin has arrived. Clem Kostin is exactly what you want in a bottom six forward. And damn it, we got to give Ken Holland some love because that trade was incredible.
Clem Kostin has more goals for the Oilers than Dmitry Samorukov had minutes played in his NHL debut for the Oilers.
Well, there you go.
They have it, folks. The trade has been won. So the only thing with Clem, I think he maybe just more consistency on being a bit of a pest, I suppose. Like to add that physicality to the team. Sometimes he kind of disappears for a game or two, but I mean, also he's a rookie in the NHL at the end of the day, or second year, whatever he is. Like, but he's just a lot of fun to kind of have out there, like a really fun personality, a depth forward who has a lot of skill and that presence on the ice, I guess you can say, and someone who isn't afraid. Like, what was the quote he said? He's like, I don't want to fight people, but I'll fight everyone if I have to. Like, put that on a
I'll
t-shirt.
stand up
That
for my
is
teammates. Yeah.
yeah, that's an amazing quote to have, and he's just a good guy. I think we're all gonna love Clem, and I hope he's around for a while.
Give him an 8-year, $8 million extension, $1 million per season. Keep him around forever. Start the GoFundMe. But this is gonna lead into like a bit of a secondary conversation, and I'll go off on a bit of a rant here. But yesterday, I put out a tweet after Klim Kostin scored his second of the game, and I just kind of said, hey, maybe all those people who are running around on Twitter being like, oh, Ken Holland doesn't have what it takes to fix this team. He can't make a good deal. He's gonna get fleeced at the deadline. It's a little ridiculous. And I don't understand the, call it a Chicken Little mentality of the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Ken Holland is a bad GM. Listen, I'm not the biggest Ken Holland fan in the world. Is he in the top tier of NHL general managers? No. Is he in the bottom tier of NHL general managers, like some weird portions of this fan base would like for you to believe? No, he's not. Let's go through the moves. Since Ken Holland took over, Lucic for Neal. Okay, they had to give up a third-round pick in that deal, which we can all agree was BS because the NHL made up a rule about James Neal scoring 20 goals, even though he didn't score 20 goals. But the Lucic for Neal trade was good. Neal was buyoutable. That deal worked. The whole point, you were going to take a chance on Neal. If it doesn't work, you buy him out. Who cares? You save money there. Okay, that one's fine. Couple of small deals. John Marino wasn't going to sign here, all of that. Tyler Ennis for a 5th-round pick, good depth move. Mike Green for a 4th-round pick and Kyle Brodziak. The pandemic screwed that one up. Obviously, we don't know what would happen if there wasn't a pandemic, but that was a fine deal. You go out, you throw a 4th-round pick in to get some extra insurance at the deadline. I like that move. That was fine. Andreas Athanasiou for Sam Gagner, who's in the lineup tonight for Winnipeg, and 2 second-round picks. That one's tougher to grade because they lost the deal. Point blank, you lost the trade. You let Athanasiou walk at the end of the year. Pandemic comes. You don't re-sign him. The cap stays flat. Those factors worked against Ken Holland. But what I'll say, and there are people who bring this up as like the shining example of Ken Holland's incompetence. Can't win trades. Remember the AA deal? Think in the moment. Athanasiou was 25, 26 years old. Athanasiou had 20-goal seasons under his belt. Team controlled. You didn't have to give up a 1st-round pick to get him. It cost you 2 second-round picks for a guy who at the time we were looking at and going, he can skate with Connor McDavid. He'll be a long-term fixture in this top 6. The thought process behind that deal made sense. The process worked. If you could find another speedy 25-year-old winger with 20 goals under his belt already early in his career, I'd give up 2 second-round picks for a guy like that right now once again. They lost the deal, though. So, okay, consider all those things. The next year at the deadline, they go get Kulikov for a 4th-round pick. Yep, sure, that was fine. I wish he would have gone all in at that deadline. That's maybe a knock against Holland, that he didn't go all in at that next deadline. Next offseason comes, that's when we get the Duncan Keith trade. Keith and Soderlund for Jones and a conditional 3rd-round pick. 3rd-round pick can become a 2nd-round pick if Edmonton wins 3 rounds in the playoffs. They don't, so it's a 3rd. That one is, in my opinion, the just flip of the Athanasiou deal. The Athanasiou deal, they ended up losing. It did not work, but the process behind it was right. You were looking to get better at the deadline. You gave up 2, mediocre assets for a guy who could help you now and in the future. The Keith deal, I didn't like it at the time, and I thought the process was bad. That is a guy who had submitted a trade list. He was basically only willing to go to Edmonton, Calgary, Vancouver, Seattle. We knew Seattle, Vancouver, Calgary really didn't have much of an interest. Seattle might have, but Calgary wasn't going to get him. Vancouver had just gotten Ekman Larson, wasn't going to get him. You still gave up a 3rd. You still gave up Caleb Jones, and you took on the full salary. If it would have been Jones in a 3rd for Keith at 50% retained, I like the process more. If it would have been Keith straight up for nothing, which, again, if you look at the history, moves like Patrick Marleau, he was still a serviceable NHL player. The Leafs had to pay a 1st-round pick to get rid of him. The value wasn't there on that deal. The process I didn't love. But it worked out. Duncan Keith, important part of this top four, got the best out of Evan Bouchard, was a big reason why the Oilers went to the Western Conference Finals last season. So if you're going to knock Holland, and this is just what I saw yesterday on the timeline as well, if you're going to knock Holland for the Keith deal, I don't think you can knock him for the Athanasiou deal. Because again, with Keith, the process wasn't good, but the result was. He didn't win the trade, but he got an effective player. And Keith was a valuable part of this team. They miss Duncan Keith right now. They don't miss him at $5 million. But if you could sign Duncan Keith for $1 million right now, you'd do it in a heartbeat because you know it would make them better. The Athanasiou deal, I liked the process, didn't like the result. You see how that's kind of the flip? So the people who are jumping at him for the A deal a few years ago, while also jumping at him for the Keith deal, I think you're talking out of two sides of your mouth there. One of those was a win. One of them was a loss, no matter whichever way you want to cut it up. The Ethan Bear for Warren Foegele deal is one he gets a lot of grief for. Warren Fogel's still playing on this team. Warren Fogel's scoring goals. Carolina had to dump Ethan Bear for a 5th-round pick. I think Ethan Bear is better than a lot of people believe he is. I didn't love that deal. I would put it in the negative column. But the Brett Kulak deal was fantastic, and he signed him to a great contract. The Derek Brassard deal was whatever. The Zach Kassian deal, I like that trade to open up the cap space, but it's Holland covering up for his mistake. The one thing I don't like about Holland is he seems to like signing guys when they're coming off a heater. Zach Kassian, Darnell Nurse, you know, when the value's not there, he seems to want to, or when the value seems at its highest, he jumps and signs these guys. In the situation like Ethan Bear, when his value is the lowest, he wants to dump them. I don't love that. And again, this isn't me saying I give Ken Holland an A+ grade for his work as the Oilers GM. But the people out there who are like, well, he's just not going to do anything good. This deadline's going to suck. Can't wait for him to give up 3 firsts for Gavrikov. It's just a little bit ridiculous, in my opinion. So that's the point I was trying to make last night. I'm not saying Ken Holland's one of the best GMs in the league. He's not. But is he one of the worst? No. I just felt like it was ridiculous. This Kostin deal is a clear win for him as well, even if it is just bringing in a bottom 6 guy, Liam. I will end my rant. I will have some water. What are your thoughts?
I agree with pretty much everything you said. Like, it's tough to just give him like a negative grade on the Athanasiou one. Like, it's COVID screwed everything on that. It's not really fair to judge too heavily. I think he's done a very good job of not spending too much, I guess you could say. Like, I don't think he's going to go out and spend a 1st-round pick on Gavrikov, to be honest. I don't think that's who he is. Like, that's just, he's not that kind of GM where he's just going to splurge the cash on a guy who's probably what, middle pairing defenseman. Like, that's just not who he is. And I think a lot of the signings he's made, like in free agency, like, yeah, Nugent Hopkins has been great. Hyman's been really good. Like, honestly, to get Yamamoto on that deal was pretty solid too for a couple of years. Like, the issue, like, I think a lot of people are having with Holland is the stuff that he doesn't do. And I think that's what pisses people off a lot, is seeing trades go on around the league. And it's like, oh, well, why didn't we get him? But I think also something to consider is maybe we just didn't have the pieces to move it. Like, you know, like the Darcy Kemper one, like there was, what was that? Connor Timmins and a 1st-round pick, right? Was that what Darcy Kemper went for a couple of years ago? Well, we offered Samorukov and a 1st-round pick. Samorukov doesn't play in the NHL. You know, it's stuff like that. Like, they just didn't have the piece to get him, and everyone just blames him for that. And it's like, well, if it's not there, then how are you supposed to trade for it? It's just kind of confusing. Yeah. But I think Holland's been fine. I think he's done a very good job of not doing what Florida do, where they just throw everything at everyone, and 2 years later they're just out of cup contention and have like no money to do anything else. Like, it's just kind of, I like his approach to everything. I appreciate that he's not like overly risky, and he kind of thinks things out, I guess is a good way to put it.
Tyler Mulikson had so much hope for AA. He added, though, it's brutal that he's the highest paid GM in the league. I don't care. Daryl Cates could pay him $80 million. And honestly, I wouldn't. It's Daryl Cates' money, man. Like, it's not like you're paying Ken Holland $5 million and that goes against the cap. And there's a lot of talk now, like, oh, how much is this coach getting paid? This. I really don't care. You could pay Ken Holland $30 million and it means nothing to me. I care about the player salaries only because of the impact on the cap and the impact it has on building a team. But like, if Jay Woodcroft made $12 million, I wouldn't be like, oh, geez, we need more from Woodcroft. Okay, he's your coach. Like, you pick your coach, you pick your GM, pay him whatever. The rich teams can afford to pay their GMs more. I don't know.
I would say, Tyler, for people who I completely agree with what you just said, but the people who are like critical of Holland, just think about what Shirelli was doing when he was here, and we were trading away our best players for nothing, or acquiring Brandon Manning, who literally broke Connor McDavid, for Drake Caggiula, who was like probably arguably a fan favorite, and it's just like, just think about those days for 5 minutes before you start giving it to Mr. Holland. Mr. Holland, Ken, whatever his name is, Uncle Ken.
Kenny, old Dutch. If you're watching on the Nation Network YouTube, loving the comments here, hammer that like button for us as well. Eric says, I just think Holland is hilarious. Sometimes bad, sometimes good. Up and down like a toilet seat. Yeah, I mean, great line. I just think the hate he gets is a little ridiculous. Like, this team made the Western Conference Finals, and I feel like the people who hate on Holland are just the people who they have a hard time admitting they're wrong sometimes. Like, I was mad when they brought back Mike Smith. Wasn't great. At the moment I was pissed. I said you should have went and paid whatever for Kemper. But let's look back on last season. Mike Smith in the last 6, 7, 8 weeks of the season, one of the best goalies in the league, top 2, top 3, whatever you want, however you want to cut it up. He was good enough to get him to the Western Conference Finals, Game 7 shutout against the LA Kings, and he made $2.6 million against the cap, which again, you needed a cheap goalie because the previous GM had Mikko Koskinen on the books for $4 million. So again, people will look at that though and be like, well, he just kept running back Mike Smith. Like, what the hell was Holland thinking? It's like, well, no, that worked. Again, you can't talk out of both sides of your mouth and hate the Keith deal and hate the Athanasiou deal. You got to like one of them. Or you can be middle of the road on them both, which I am. So I don't know. I just feel like the people who hate them have a tough time admitting when they're wrong and just want to keep doubling down with this weird, the sky is falling, because they're worried to sit there and be like again, at last year's deadline, he played that deadline perfectly.
Yeah.
Went out and made the unpopular move to get Evander Kane. I didn't like that move at the time, but I admit I'm wrong. And then he went out and got Brett Kulak, who ended up being great for what you paid for him. He was more impactful than who was the guy? Ben Sherratt was for Florida. And Ben Sherratt cost you more. He cost you a first-round pick.
And now he's not even with you.
Yeah, exactly.
Now he's not even on the team. I'd be curious to know what do people outside of like the Athanasiou, what do people hate the most? Not hate, but like, what's the move that people are just annoyed about? Like, I just want to know. If like, just leave your comments and stuff like that. Well, I'm curious.
Which again, and I saw yesterday, it's Bear for Fogle. People love throwing that one out there. Bear for Fogle. It's like, well,
Bear got traded.
And that was a fairly inconsequential move. Like, I don't like having Fogle on the books at 2.75, but like, the right side of your blue line is not an issue right now. CC Barry Bouchard, that's good. Barry's having a good year. People don't like the extension. Sure, he's having a good year. He's top 10 in scoring by a D-man, and he's been fine defensively, and he was good in the playoffs last year. So, like, again, it's just people don't like admitting when they're wrong, and it's leading them just wanting to pile on Holland. That's fine. Tala's in says Campbell deal's hurting us. Yeah, right now it is.
It won't.
But we'll see.
Forever. Yeah.
It's a long contract. It could really suck. Like, that one could be really bad. But again, the Campbell deal sucks. Kane deal's great. Hyman deal's great. Nuge deal's great. Kulak deal's great. Nurse deal sucks.
CC deal, pretty good.
CC deal's unbelievable.
Yep.
Skinner deal's going to be great. So again, I don't know. My point isn't to be like pumping his tires, and I feel like I'm getting that way a little bit right now. That's not my point. I'm not trying to be like best GM. Look at all these great moves. But the people who are like, well, we'd be winning cups if it wasn't for Holland. We probably wouldn't. Process. A lot of people saying they wouldn't mind paying big for Chychrun. Yeah, sure. I would too. But again, we don't know what we don't know. There's a lot of like, oh, you give up the 2 firsts in Broberg and get Chychrun. What if Arizona's sitting there and their pro scouts and their amateur scouts go, oh, we don't like Broberg. We're doing it for Holloway, or we're not doing it. Okay, are you giving up 2 firsts and Holloway for Jacob Chychrun? Some of you might say yes. I wouldn't. So I don't know.
There was people on Twitter talking like last night. I think Mark Spector was actually one of them, was saying it would be Dylan Holloway and 2 first-round picks, maybe even plus. I don't know. You could do that, sure. Like, I'm not saying Chychrun's bad by any means, but it just doesn't feel like Holland's the kind of the guy to do that. And also, like, maybe I'm wrong, Ty. I just couldn't think of like a deal that was like that blockbustery where you had to give up 2 first-round picks in Holloway. The only one I kept thinking of was Hampus Lindholm last year, but that didn't seem like as steep, right? Or am I wrong?
Lindholm was pretty steep, and they signed
it was steep. but it wasn't 2 first-round picks. It wasn't a decent prospect, first-round pick, John Moore, and then another pick, I believe it was. I think that was the deal. And then they signed him to the 8-year ticket.
Yeah. And that was a part of it. That's the reason they paid so much, is because they knew they had the extension ready. Yeah, it was Urho Vakinen. John Moore was the cap dump, a first and 2 seconds.
Okay, so it's somewhat similar, I guess.
So yeah, you're looking, if you want to compare like apples to apples, Lindholm to Chychrun, I think the differences are Chychrun's under contract for less, sure. Lindholm you would have had for the 8-year extension, all that, but Chychrun's younger and maybe better. So yeah, you're looking again off that package. It's Broberg, it's a first, it's 2 seconds, and then a cap dump in there as well. So it's a lot, man. Like that's just all I'm saying. And if you want to focus on right now with the Oilers, if Arizona, if Bill Armstrong's sitting there going, it's Holloway and it's 2 firsts, or we're not doing the deal, are you maybe better off using those 2 firsts, keeping Holloway, go out? Maybe Gavrikov's not your guy. Maybe he's not the answer, but go out and get whoever this year's Brett Kulak is. Pay a second, not a first. Go use a first-round pick on a high-end forward rental. Go get that good defensive third-line center that makes you better in both ends, helps your penalty kill. Now you've given up less assets. You've improved in 2 spots. And again, I get that Chychrun has control. I like that. I am not against getting Jacob Chychrun. I'm just not giving up 2 firsts and Holloway for him. But you're also trying to win right now, in this moment. And I think filling 2 holes with less assets might be a smarter move for right now in the moment, going all in, which I think Ken Holland will. That might be a better play for this year's Stanley Cup hopes than just getting Chychrun and saying, okay, now we have no first for the next 2 years. Those bullets are gone. Once you shoot them, you can't get them back. And you're giving up on another first rounder in Dylan Holloway, who I liked the tilt last night. I think that's a guy who's going to be a player for you for a long time. I'm not giving up Holloway in a Chychrun deal.
I'm with you. We got a question in the chat here, Tyler, and then maybe we can talk about tonight's game too. I want to ask you guys, which deal do you think can help us out the most? You kind of just answered it then, but is there specific names, I guess, you want to attach to that?
I'm honestly really torn on the defenseman side of things, because I don't love Gavrikov enough. I don't first round pick love Gavrikov. I think I second round pick love Gavrikov if they keep half the money. But I'm not giving up a first for him. I love Taves. I think that's a Ken Holland kind of move. I think Taves is having a good year. I think that's the kind of guy who can come in here and really help this team out. So those will be 2 I just throw out there. But again, I don't know. We need Frank back on the show. He's been off for too long.
Yeah. I guess, like, yesterday, if you listen to ONR, we were basically screaming at each other about how this team is just soft sometimes and not reactionary to stuff that happens. I think a guy like Gudas would be an awesome fit for this team.
Yeah.
I think he'd be really, really good, especially in the playoffs. And I've been on this name for a while. I don't know if it necessarily fits because of other players we have of it, but like Max Domi for me would be an unreal pickup. I think he would be fantastic. I love him because he just kind of like, I know he's a shorter player and everything, kind of like Yamamoto, but he has that bite and he's not afraid to like drop the gloves if he needs to. He can score goals. He's doing it quite well this year on Chicago. The thing for me that he apparently really likes the coach in Chicago. That's a reason why he went there. So I don't know if they would necessarily move him, but I've loved Domi since he was drafted, to be honest. I think he's been an awesome player. And just last thing, I guess, like people are saying trade Barry. I do not think that's ever going to happen. I think Barry's here for his entire contract.
I wouldn't be surprised if he gets moved in the offseason, but he's big. He's bigger in the room than I think a lot of people maybe understand. I love the Gudas idea, but you need Florida to fall out of the race or be willing to do something. They have, like, their blue line isn't that good if they move Gudas, because you got Ekblad, Montour, Forsling, Gudas. Solid top 4. You got 4 good pieces. If you move Gudas, you're looking a little thin, but if you're out of the race and you want picks, sure. Like, he's making $2.5 million. Like, that's Gudas would be my number 1 if Florida falls out of it. Susie would be my number 1 if Seattle falls out of it. So again, you need to just kind of wait for these things to work themselves out. Someone was saying Gustav Forsling. He's under contract for another year, man. Florida's not going into a rebuild, so I don't really see that happening.
Sam Lafferty?
Yeah, that's a name that's popular right now. But again, that's your Tyler Ennis, Derek Brassard deal. That guy costs you a 4th or a 5th. He's not going to cost you a 2nd.
I think Holland has the exact same deadline as last season. Yep. I think he goes out and gets that middle pairing defenseman for probably a similar price. I actually think it'll be Niemelainen is the one that gets moved now that he's proved how fast of a skater he is at the skills competition. I mean, who doesn't want that speed? So I think he'll be gone in like a move with a couple of picks. And then I think you find in a similar guy like Derek Brassard. Like thinking about it now, like obviously the offense hasn't been there the whole time for the forward group. Like a lot of them have struggled, but now Puljujarvi has a couple of goals in his last few games. Yamamoto's back and contributing big. Like supposedly Kane might be back like sooner than we think, which is interesting.
Huge.
Like Fogel's had his moments. Like I don't know if the forward group necessarily needs anything big, impactful. Like I said, Domi would be great, but I feel like we're going to get someone similar to like a Derek Brassard. So maybe a guy like Lafferty is kind of the pick, or the player they go out and get.
I think I think he wants to make a forward splash. I think that'll be a bigger move. I agree. He's going to get a Kulak-esque piece. He'll get a depth piece. Puljujarvi's going to be moved out to make money work at some point, and he's going to go, okay, we got to replace that piece because Puljujarvi is playing in the top 6. And he scored last night, which was great to see as well. And then I think they panned on the broadcast like Yamamoto's family. I was very confused. Anyways, let's Oilers Nation every day. Streaming live on the Nation Network YouTube from the Sports Closet studio. Oilers rocking the reverse retros tonight against the Winnipeg Jets. If you want to get your own reverse retro, Sports Closet has a ton of players, and they have a bunch of the gear as well. Like it's like a starter jacket style thing with the reverse retro logo on the back. It's sick. Head to their website, sportscloset.ca, or if you're in St. Albert, Sherwood Park, or by Kingsway Mall, you can swing in, check them out in person. Sherwood Ford Giant pregame edition of the show brought to you by Sherwood Ford and their mobile service center. It works. There is a link in this YouTube description to check it out right now. Yeah, let's get into things here. The Winnipeg Jets rolling into town. Oilers on the second of back-to-backs. Liam, this is a Jets team that is having a really damn good season. Connor Hellebuck's kind of been carrying them for the most part, but that's fine. They scored a decent clip, even though they're banged up right now, but they don't give up a lot of goals. Their penalty kill is good as well, and they're competitive in a very competitive Central Division. We can take a peek at the standings here as well, which show just the wild card and the Pacific. But a big reason why Colorado is in a wild card spot is because teams like Winnipeg and Dallas are having such strong seasons. So with all that being said, point I'm getting to, tough matchup tonight, especially considering you're on the second of back-to-backs.
Yeah, and possibly without Leon Draisaitl too. Like it's going to be a difficult game for the Oilers, but also Winnipeg's missing a couple of players too. Like Ehlers isn't going to play, and then Blake Wheeler as well. Like they're not as deep as they usually are in the forward group, but at the end of the day, they got Connor Hellebuck between the pipes, and that guy could win a game on his own any given night, right? So when they're a very good team, and like you said, like division they play in, they have tough games every single night. They don't have, I guess they do have like an Anaheim in Chicago, and we lost Anaheim, so I'll take that back. But they're a good team, and Josh Morrissey has been great for them this season. I believe he's going to be in tonight, right? There's reports saying he's back.
Hey, you know what? Let's just get right into the lines for the Winnipeg Jets, because you are right, Liam. Josh Morrissey is healthy and back in the lineup, so not great timing from an Oilers perspective there. Pierre-Luc Dubois on the top line with Kyle Connor and our boy Sam Gagner. More on him in just a second. Mark Scheifele with Adam Lowry and Carson Kuhlman. Kevin Stenlund with AJF, Axel Johnson Farabee, and Morgan Barron. Gustafsson with Asamont, that's a handful of a name, and Jansen Harkins. And then on the blue line, it's Morrissey with DeMello, Sandberg with Pionk, and Dylan with Ville Hanola. They're banged up. They're missing Ehlers, missing Wheeler. That hurts them a lot. This team isn't very deep. The injuries are impactful, but at the same time, Connor Hellebuck's in net, Liam. So that's a guy that's tough to beat.
Yeah, exactly. Like he's a fantastic goalie, and it's funny you say Neil Pionk. He's one of those players I just forget about until you see him, and you're like, that guy is such a pain in the ass to play against. So I'm not excited to go up against him. But yeah, like they're not as deep as the Oilers, and like the Oilers are going to be missing Kane. Obviously, Draisaitl's likely not going to play either, but Oilers still look strong because RNH is having a career season and stepping up to the Oilers. And like last night, he had 4 points. So hopefully the Oilers can build some momentum from that big win last night and kind of move into it. I guess we'll jump into the Oilers right away. But like people are asking, goalie tonight? Are you going Campbell? Or are you going Skinner? I think it's such a tough call.
No, man, you can't. It's too early in the season to be going with a guy on back-to-backs. You go with Campbell tonight. Give him his moment. Let's see if Campbell can steal you one. You need Soupy to come through.
I mean, I agree. Eventually, you've got to play him. You've got to play him. But I don't know. It feels like every time we think Campbell's going to play, Skinner plays. Like, I would have played him last night, probably. And even the Anaheim game, I would have played Campbell and Phoenix. And now here we are, and he didn't play any of those games. It's just Woodcroft has just got us all playing. What's the saying? He's playing chess while we're playing checkers or whatever. Like, I truly have no idea what he's going to do.
Yeah, I really don't either, man. But I think tonight it's safe to assume it's a Jack Campbell start. The rest of the Oilers lineup, we don't have a ton of details on it because obviously they're not skating today. But this is what they rolled with last night. I'm expecting more of the same from them this evening. I liked the McLeod, Fogle, Yamamoto line. Thought that was good. Nuge actually has some sneaky chemistry with Kostin and Janmark. That's all fine. You know, maybe you consider going 11-7 if Broberg's healthy, but I would expect same lineup tonight for the Edmonton Oilers with Campbell starting over Skinner. Because again, it's too early in the year. If this was game 81, if this was game 75, and it's like we are in a dogfight for a playoff spot, Skinner starting. But we're not.
Yeah.
It's December.
Yeah, I guess you don't want to have that controversy in the dressing room at the moment or conflict with the coach. So, yeah, maybe Campbell's the guy. And you know what? He's been okay. He's been better, I guess is a better way to put it. He's got that new pads. We got to test those out. We got to get those not as stiff or as stiff, whatever. I guess he wants them stiff, right? With the rebounds, it's very hard to predict. Just stop the puck, Jack. I don't care what you're wearing. Just stop the puck.
Sam Gagner going to be in action tonight for the Winnipeg Jets, playing on the top line. Top 6, Sammy G, 1,000 games in the NHL. He hit that mark the other day. I fully expect Sam Gagner to get a nice little video ovation tonight from the Rogers Place crowd. I'm sure the team will put something together. 1,000 games for this guy is wildly impressive. And not impressive from the perspective of like, oh, well, he was a 6th overall pick. Yeah, like the Oilers were expecting him to be a franchise center of sorts, right? But when you go through his career, to get to 1,000 game in the NHL when you had the expectations of being a top 10 pick. And then from there, remember 2015-16, that guy was in the American League. 2018-19, that guy was in the American League. Reinvents himself every single time and bounces back. Like that time he went to Philly, was not good, had to go down to the American League, reinvents himself with Columbus, power play specialist, bottom 6 guy, learned to kill penalties, found a spot in the league for a few years. Comes back to Edmonton again. He was in Bakersfield for a bit, actually, in the Oilers organization too, but he comes back to Edmonton, puts together some good games, and then he goes to Detroit, finds this role as like a guy who can mentor your young players. He can come in and out of the lineup, almost like a player coach at times. And the Jets scoop him up again this year. 1,000 games is a huge accomplishment for this guy. He was one of my first favorite Oilers when I was a kid. I loved him. And it's great to see him hit this mark and kind of carve out the career that he has because it's been a great one.
Yeah, I mean, when I moved to Canada in 2007, that was Sam Gagner's draft, and I remember seeing him walk on the stage. So he was like my first Oilers memory, I guess you could say, was the Oilers drafting Sam Gagner. So it is really cool to see him get 1,000 games, and it's cooler to see him get it close to like it's 1,001 tonight. But it's like really good that it's still kind of fresh in everyone's mind, and hopefully, like the Oilers do something. I'm sure they will. They're really good at this stuff, and just to honor him because he was a great Oiler, just a great leader. You know, like for some guys, like they don't want to go and play in Bakersfield for a handful of games. Like they'll just say no and sit in the stands. But he went down there and played and spent all those years in Detroit. Like he has like 11 playoff games played or something. Like this guy has been through the thick of it in the NHL, and he's made it all the way to 1,000 games, and it's just awesome. And he has an 8-point night to go along with it, which was something I think every Oilers fan will remember forever.
Yeah. It is a double Sherwood Ford GIANT Gameday, Liam, because not only do the Oilers play at 8, but we got Canada-Sweden at 4:30, the annual New Year's game at the World Junior Hockey Championships. And this tournament has been unbelievable. Like, this is the first year I felt like the hype was really back for this thing, and it's lived up to it. Like, the upsets, Canada losing to Czechia, even today you had Slovakia losing, and they had a chance to clinch up first in the division, more or less, or in their group. So things are complicated right now. But here's I think the easiest way to put it. Right now, Czechia is beating Germany 2-0. They should hold on to that. If Czechia holds on, Canada can't win the division, correct?
Yes, there's only one way they can do it, and that's if Germany win in regulation and Canada win in regulation, or maybe overtime or something too. I can't remember. But basically, Germany have to win.
So it doesn't look like that's going to happen. It's halfway through the game. Czechia is up 2-rip on Germany. So there are two scenarios. If Canada beats Sweden, they will either play USA or Slovakia in the quarterfinals. If you lose to Sweden, you play either Finland or Slovakia. And that will basically be based on the outcome of USA-Finland, because the winner of that one is going to come first. And then if USA loses, I think they're third. If Finland loses, they're second. Slovakia's third, right? So you kind of see how those three can sort themselves out. On the flip side of that, Canada is either coming first, second, or potentially third as well.
Yeah, like
very confusing.
There's a lot going on there. I guess from a Canadian perspective, they just got to win tonight. They got to win to like prove that they're not frauds, I guess you want to call them that. Like, it's great to have two big wins over Austria and Germany, but if you can't beat Czechia and Sweden, then you're not really true contenders in the tournament, right? So they've been a lot of fun to watch. Like, even that game, the first game, like it was a weird one. Like, it was definitely entertaining. I don't know. What did you think about the Michigan attempts? Two of them.
I thought it was a bit much. I don't hate the move, but it's got to work. And I think in a big game like that, it's kind of like and especially a game where you lose to a team that's worse than you, quite frankly, it kind of showed like you thought you got too cocky.
Yeah, they definitely got a bit humbled, I guess is a good way to put it. But to come out and score however many they did against, 9 against Germany and then 11 against Austria. So you have 20 goals in 2 games. Like, hopefully that's some kind of momentum builder for them. And like, I mean, Connor Bedard, holy smokes, like, what a player. I remember I was lucky enough to actually see him play before he went to Regina and stuff. And he was just this 13-year-old kid playing on West Van at the John Reed. And it was a bronze medal game. And he just absolutely lit it up. And everyone I spoke to was like, this kid is going to be special. And now here we are, like, essentially on the world stage. And what does he have? 14 points in 3 games.
14 points in 3 games.
And he's already like, it's crazy. And he's he's tied with Eberle for the most goals at a World Juniors for Canada, and he's not even drafted into the league yet. It's absolutely insane what he's been able to do, and I'm so excited to see what he can do. Obviously, the rest of the way of the World Juniors, but also like when he gets to the NHL, because we all know what the conversation's going to be. And I'm low-key hoping Vancouver might get him, just so we see it often. Like, I just want to see it a lot. They want the best on best. And to get Bedard versus McDavid 3 or 4 times a year would be fantastic.
Yeah. Canada, big-time favorites in this hockey game. You mentioned Bedard, though. I mean, you get no value betting on him. We'll get into our Betway bets in just a second. But the thing that I find funny, and it really shows the gap between Bedard and the other guys his age. So Connor Bedard, draft eligible. He's 17. He is the best player in this tournament. And it's not even that close. Like, the gap between him and the guys who play in the NHL already, there's a gap there. Mm-hmm. Adam Fantilli is expected to be the 2nd or 3rd overall pick this year. He's a depth player on Canada. Yeah. Playing on like the 3rd line or whatever. And Bedard is like leading. He's leading the tournament in scoring. And the guy who's going to go 2nd overall is like, he's a decent 3rd liner at this thing. It's wild.
It is insane just how good he is. And like you said, like, the difference between him and other players is kind of like a couple of years ago, do you remember when McKinnon and Jonathan Drouin both went? And it felt like they were both like very close in kind of where they were. But they're like, these two to compare, like, there is no comparison. Like, Connor Bedard is probably the best player this draft has ever seen since McDavid.
Most hype prospect since McDavid.
100%. And like before that, it was Crosby. So he's such a special player. And he's just exciting. But I will say one quick thing about Canada. Okay. If they don't advance to like at least the semifinals in this, I think for the on-ice brand, like for the on-ice of what Canada does, they have to reevaluate this massively, because countries are catching up to them big time now. Yep. The US is right there. Czechia is going to lead the group. Like, there was only a few years ago they were like fighting against relegation, weren't they? Like, it's kind of nuts. Like Finland too. Like, Canada needs to figure out a way to get these best players playing more often. Like the US development team, for example, has their team, like basically US development goes all the way till U18, then you go off to college or whatever. Just put a Team Canada team in the CHL somewhere. Maybe you play a year in Ontario, Quebec, then Western League, and you have the best players playing on that team. And that's how you develop. And then when you go to these tournaments, you can actually win the things, Because it wasn't long ago, there was 13 first-round picks from the U.S. development team with like
Yeah.
Spencer Knight and Trevor Zegras, Cole Caulfield. Like Canada, I think it's got to change a little bit.
So you want to see them put together like a national development program similar to what the U.S. does instead of just having kids go off to their junior teams.
Yeah, and I think it also helps other junior players too, because then they take those big roles, and you're not taking anybody out of the league. Essentially, you're making it more accessible to more players.
CHL would never bite on that. They would never.
It would never happen. But
all right, Liam, we got to get into our Betway bets because we are creeping up on an hour on today's show already here on a Saturday. Yes. Let's start with Canada. They are minus 2.5 goals is what you have to bet them at to get even money. Do you think they can win by 2.5 tonight?
I think they can. I don't know if I would risk it to do it because it's an important game for both.
Yep.
But sure.
Okay, we're going rapid fire style with this one. Give me someone to score on Team Canada. Who do you like to score? Can't pick Bedard because Betway doesn't even have him up.
Logan Stankoven.
I will say Shane Wright. I think he's an experienced guy. I think, him being a little bit more mature than the other players, I think he'll start to shine through in the big games. So I will go with Shane Wright. Let's talk about the Oilers game this evening. The over hit last night. I'll be honest, I don't love the over this evening just because of a guy like Connor Hellebuck between the pipes. The Oilers are minus 130 on the money line. Liam, do you like betting on the Oilers tonight?
I mean, I like betting on the Oilers every night. So yeah, I'll try and manifest a win. I'll go with that. But we spoke about him earlier. Darnell Nurse has been rocking recently, and he's been hitting his shot prop a lot. I think it's 3 or 4 games in a row now. Like, he's shooting. He's definitely shooting. And then I thought it'd be fun just to see if McDavid could get another 3-point night, which seems very likely. And I think it's funny that it's only plus 162 because of just how often he's hitting this. So those are the 2 favorites for me. Oilers money line too. I'll go with that. Try and manifest a good end to the year for the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah, I mean, my thing is if you're going to bet on the Oilers to win a game, you might as well just do the Oilers to win McDavid 2+ points parlay that Betway offers up. It's plus 140. Why not? Take a stab at it. You could also, if you're feeling Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Oilers to win plus 2 points for Nugent-Hopkins is like plus 300. So that's not a bad spot either. I'm tailing you on the Nurse shot prop, though. That is the official bet of Oilers Nation every day today. Darnell Nurse over 2.5 shots at minus 120. I think that is a solid spot, Liam. So good stuff there. Give me a goal score for the Oilers as well.
I'll go with Yams. I think Yamamoto deserves one. I think he'll get one. Get the crowd going.
All right. Usually on our Saturday shows, we like to cook up like a big parlay, though, right?
Do you want to do that? I'm ready for it if you want to do it.
Yeah, let me get all set up here. So we're obviously throwing in Oilers puck line because he needed to be juicy. We're not throwing together a big parlay that's going to be safe. So let's go Oilers puck line with this bad boy. We'll throw in the Nurse shot prop because we both like that.
Let's get the Yams goal in there.
Okay, so we'll go with.
Do McDavid 2 points, or do you want to do 3?
Let's go 2. Let's go 2 for McDavid points. Got to find that. All right.
Okay. And then,
let's go Nuge over 1.5 as well.
Yes. And then what are we at there? Do we need one more? Because if we do, I got one.
What is it?
Why don't we go Hyman? If McDavid's getting 3 points, Hyman's got to get a goal, right? Just kind of feels how it goes.
Yeah. Sure. 45 to 1, Liam, is what we're looking at on that bad boy. If you want to tail us with our juicy parlay, puck line, Yamo and Hyman to score, McDavid and Nuge over 1.5 points, Darnell Nurse over 2.5 shots. There's your big juicy parlay today. Shout out to our friends at Betway, 19+. As always, please bet responsibly. QF Pro is in and says over 1.5 power play goals. Twisted says Holloway's going to follow up his fight with a goal today. Kyler just said send it. Why not? Over 1.5 power play goals always. Kyler also commented ginger beef in all caps. Shout out to our guy, Reed Schaefer, picked up an assist in Canada's victory the other day. Liam, we are running out of time, my guy.
Yeah, we are.
It is a big sports day. This flew by, but it is a big sports day. Before you leave the chat, if you're watching on YouTube, hammer that like button as well. Maybe we can scoop up our last 13 likes that we needed right here at the end. Shout out to our friends at Sherwood Ford the Giant. Again, if you want to learn more about their fantastic mobile service department, link in the YouTube chat. Sports Closet, Soho, Cornerstone Insurance, Betway, and you, Liam. Happy New Year's, buddy. Thanks to everyone who tuned in the first couple of months. This was a lot of fun. We're going to keep it rolling into 2023.
Yeah. Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone has a good night. Hopefully we're celebrating a a sweet, sweet Oilers victory. And if you're at the rink, give Sam Gagner a nice round of applause from us too. He deserves
There
it.
you go. Happy New Year, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. As always, we'll be back on Monday with a new edition of the show, and we will chat with you then. Happy New Year.